There is a tremendous danger in walking without wisdom. When wisdom is absent from our lives and we go about our days making our plans and making decisions, key decisions in our lives, and we lack the wisdom and the knowledge, it's such a tremendous danger. And I want to talk about that. So before I get started, I want to apologize for the audio. Not only am I not in the podcast room, I don't have my wireless mics with me. Of all days, I'm at home right now. I'm actually sitting in my closets. This is, and you guys know this is a sacred place for me. And I just happens to left all of my wireless mics at the office. But I can't let that stop me from delivering this message that God has put in my heart. So I'm going to do it anyway. So I apologize about the audio. But there is a tremendous amount of danger when we go about our lives without seeking wisdom and knowledge, not only from God, but even seeking good counsel. And I don't even know how long this podcast is going to be. This is going to be one of those moments that I'm not going to rush to try to please someone. This is going to be one of those moments where if you truly are searching out wisdom and knowledge, as I have been tremendously, especially these last couple of weeks, God has not gotten me off of it. I'm drenched with searching it out. So if you're one of those people where you're really seeking to hear from God right now, and you're seeking the wisdom and knowledge that you need to make key decisions in your life, I think you're going to really be blessed by this. At least I pray you will. So I want to start with the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs, let's just start in chapter 2. The title of this is called The Moral Benefits of Wisdom. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Then I'm going to read a little bit of the King James Version. I'm going to mix up some of the Bible readings with different versions of the Bible. I'll get into why I'm doing that later. I've learned and gotten wisdom in that to not always just talk from one source of the Bible, to make sure I'm including some other ones. But anyway, let's get started. So the moral benefits of wisdom is in Proverbs chapter 2. It says, "My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. And if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He holds victory in store for the upright. He is a shield to those whose walk is blameless, for he guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair and every good path. For wisdom," I'm in verse 10 now, "for wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you." And I'm going to stop in verse 12. "Wisdom will save you from the ways of the wicked man." Now I'm going to jump to King James Version, and I just want to read it again. And again, I'm not going to rush today for anything, so you guys just got to bear with me. King James Version, Proverbs chapter 2, says, "My son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commands with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver and searchest for her as hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom, out of his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler," which is like to my understanding, like a shield. So he is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the path of judgment and preserveth the way of his saints. Or in the New Testament version, it says the way of his faithful ones. Verse 9, "Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment and equity." And one of the translations of that is fairness. "Yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee." So what is one of the more benefits of wisdom, just from what we just read in that? It talks about getting knowledge, getting understanding, having victory, having a shield, guarding us, protecting us, even protecting us from wicked men. I want to read a little bit further in Proverbs chapter 3. Proverbs chapter 3 is further benefits of wisdom. So in verse 1 it says, I hope I'm still recording here. Okay. In verse 1 it says, my son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. Okay, so why should we do that? In verse 2 it says, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. That's interesting. In verse 3, let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. That's how you win a good name in the sight of God and in the sight of others. Verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Listen to verse 7. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. Why? Let's look at verse 8 to see why. Then it says, this will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. I'm in verse 9. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruit of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing. So you see the before and the after. It's almost like it's telling you something and then it's giving you, my minister just talked about this the other day. He says every time God gives a command, there's a promise that follows. And I thought that was such a good point. So he says, then your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. I think I'm in verse 11. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves as a father the son he delights in. Listen to this in verse 13. Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, the man who gains understanding. Okay, so why is that important? Verse 14. For she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. Really? Verse 15. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Really? Verse 16. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Verse 17, her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. Did you catch that? Whenever I'm not walking in peace, one of the things I say to myself, I've even said this to my staff, it says, something's missing here. There's some wisdom missing here. Whenever there's all this chaoticness and I'm all over the place and I'm anxious about things and I'm not, something's just off. I'm like, and I immediately know I got to get back to my closet. Something's missing when my peace is absent. Let me keep going. Verse 18, she is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Those who lay hold of her will be blessed. And then I'm going to jump down to verse 23. This talks about if you preserve sound judgment and discernment. And I'll go to verse 21. My son, preserve sound judgment and discernment. Do not let them out of your sight, for they will be life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. So we're talking about preserving judgment and discernment. Let that just stick with you a minute. Not all over the place making decisions because of something you feel. You feel this is right, or you feel this is what I want to do, or you're having an emotional moment and just want to do whatever. We're talking about sound judgment. So it says, my son, preserve sound judgment and discernment. Do not let them out of your sight, for they will be life for you and an ornament to grace your neck. Now let's look at the then. Let's look at what happens when we do this. Verse 23, then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Let me read that again, verse 24. I'm in Proverbs 3:24. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. I always know something's off with me when my sleep is disturbed, when I can't even rest at night. It's either God, doing something in me because he's warning me against something or teaching me something or convicting me of something, to be honest. But when my sleep is restless and my mind is all over the place I'm just worried and stressed about things and just up all through the night and not able to be settled, I know something's off with me preserving sound judgment and discernment and having that wisdom and treasures and that knowledge from God. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me. It may be different from you. You know, I'm no one's preacher, I'm no one's minister, I'm no one's prophetess. This is being my life, me sharing what goes on with me. But when I am restless through the night, when I am going to bed and my heart is racing and I'm worried or fearful about something, I know that something is not lining up with the biblical principles in the Bible. So let me read that again. It says, then you will go about your way go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, I'm in verse 24, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Check out verse 25. Have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being snared. I'm not even going to talk any on that. I'm going to just let that passage rest with you on your own. That was Proverbs 2. What did I just read? I just read Proverbs 3 as well. Now I want to go on to Proverbs 27. I'm supposed to be at work right now, just so you know. All kind of meetings planned. And actually, this is the week where I'm actually starting to record my book, the Audible version. And when I tell you that God has me in prayer, he has me in fasting, he has me in searching out wisdom and knowledge like you wouldn't believe, this has taken my biggest priority. I've even today pushed back things and said, I know I'm supposed to be there. We're supposed to be recording. But I got to search out this wisdom and this hidden treasure, this secret in the Bible. I got to be filled with this knowledge and wisdom of God. This is what comes first before you start your day, you guys. This is why I believe, and I'm speaking for myself, sometimes we're all over the place. You ever go to work or start your day off, and at the end of the day, you can't even think through 4 or 5 things. Forget 4 or 5. You can't even think of 2 or 3 things that you did in 8 hours of the day. Just all over the place. Just ripping and running, right? Right? This is why it's important that we settle ourselves first before we begin our day. I think there's a tremendous danger when we lack wisdom in our life, when we lack seeking out the knowledge of God. Let me keep going. I just wrote down a few passages, and I've been reading my Bible for quite a while, so this is just some stuff I just read. So Proverbs 27 I wrote down. And again, I apologize about the audio. I'm recording directly from my phone, but that's okay. As long as you can hear my voice and hear the word, that's all that matters. So Proverbs 27:17, very short verse. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. You may say, well, Z, why do you bring that up? I bring that up because what I see, I don't want to get into talking about my kids because they'll probably know exactly what I'm saying. I say this passage to them all the time, especially one of my children. I say it often, but I'll just say this. Let me read this other passage, and then it'll speak for itself. Because I want to make a point that plans fail for lack of counsel, and there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it could lead to death if you're not wise in getting wise counsel. But in this passage, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Please don't walk around with the pride and the arrogance that you can do all this on your own. You don't need no help from anybody. You don't need no counsel from anybody. You don't want no input from nobody. It's just all you. Sometimes we can get into this spiritual pride. Again, let me speak for myself. Let me just speak for me. Sometimes it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you have all the answers. You don't need any input or guidance or anything, let alone reading and praying because you think you got it all together. The Bible teaches us over and over again. There's a gazillion scriptures in here. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Proverbs 15:22 says, so I was going to go into some details about my kids, but I'm not going to do that. I'll protect their privacy. Proverbs 15:22 says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So I highly advise you look that passage up. There's another one in Proverbs 14:12 that I just read. I've read this many times before. It says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. So again, we're just talking about wisdom. I'm not trying to scare anybody on anything. You guys know I'm all about encouraging and loving you to sit in the presence of God. But it's also important that you know that you need to be wise in the decisions you make and the things you do. Let me deviate just for half a second, just for like 30 seconds. Do you know how many times I'm pretty sure that I get on people's nerves because they're waiting for me to make a decision on something, and I'm waiting on God to give me that confirmation. Just as King David, before he went into war, he went to the Lord and said, shall I go and pursue them? Remember that? And there's many other passages on that. That's what I do my best to live by. I want to hear what God has to say. You know, this book that God has written, and it's totally been God. And the book is finished, by the way. I think I've already announced that. I'm just trying to get the Audible and some other things together so that it can all be launched at the same time. I've gotten on a lot of people's nerves with this, even my financial advisor, because they're like, this should have been out. No. I'm walking in wisdom and guidance from God, and it's in his timing, because this ain't about me. This really has very little to do with me. This has to do with me doing a project the way God told me to do it and how he told me to do it and when he wants it rolled out. So regardless if someone gets a little uneasy or feel a little bit uncomfortable or feel like, well, why are you delaying this a little bit? I want to hear from God. If you go out there and do things on your own, this is for those who are still listening at this point, because right now it's been about 15 minutes and some people can't listen longer than that. But anyway, for those who are still with me, let me speak for myself. When I try to go out there and do things on my own, on my timing, on my will, and I don't have instruction from God, or at least a yes or an indicator to move forward, I notice I always have to try to figure it out on my own. But when I go out there and I do something that I know that God told me to do, I don't care what comes my way, what obstacle, what discouragement. There is no devil in hell that can hold me back. Okay? No different than starting this podcast, because I definitely didn't know what I was doing. You know, not running ads, don't follow nobody on most of those channels, don't know what I was doing, but I knew what God told me to do. And when you walk in that wisdom and that instruction, when you download that instruction from him and then you move forth, there's this power and force that goes with you because you're walking in line. Let me keep going. So I don't want to talk as much as I want to read. Where did we leave off? I read Proverbs 14:12. There's another one, Proverbs 23:4-5. This is a good one for those who are stressing out, trying to, get rich overnight, and that are structuring your entire life around making money and putting that as your biggest priority. Let me tell you something on this that I pray blesses you. Proverbs 23, verse 4-5 says, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Have the wisdom to show restraint. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Don't wear yourself out to get rich. I've noticed that with myself. Now, God has always blessed me to be an entrepreneur since I was about 12 or 13. And you guys will learn my story about how we fled from one part of the country to the other side. As a result of some tremendous abuse my mother was going through. There was one night we were almost killed. All of that's going to be in the book. You'll read about it. But anyway, I've always been an entrepreneur and going after things in life. God just built me that way naturally. But I also have to remind myself, my sole focus is not to be rich or to make money. My sole focus, my primary focus, is my walk with God and walking in step with the Holy Spirit. Now, back in the day, I was all about anything I did, it had to do with making money. You guys, when you focus on God, when you focus on your relationship with him, and when you focus on gaining that wisdom and understanding, it is beyond amazing how God will overflow your cup when he knows he can get through you what he puts in you. It's amazing. It's almost as if, this is just me, this is just my little 2 cents. It's almost as if when God knows he can trust you, with riches and honor and glory, and that is not going to go to your head, where you're going to get so doggone prideful, where you think it's all about you and you think you're a big shot at this point. It's almost as if God knows he can trust you, he just keeps pouring and pouring and pouring to the point where you're just like, God, I can't take anymore. Like, slow down. This is too much. Anyway, let me keep going. I'll go in a whole nother direction on that. I want to go over to the book of Daniel. I don't know why, but God won't get me off the book of Daniel for nothing. I've been trying to get off of it, and he just keeps pulling me back to it. I talked about Daniel chapter 1 and 2 the other day. Let me turn to it. It's after Ezekiel. talked about Daniel chapter 1 and 2 the other day. And I talked about how God gives wisdom and knowledge. Remember, Daniel was one of the ones that was in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember King Nebuchadnezzar over Babylon when he took over Jerusalem? And Daniel was one of the ones that didn't want to defile himself with the king's food and ate vegetables and what have you. But anyway, he was given a lot of knowledge. In Daniel 1, verse 17, it says, to these four men, it's talking about Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel. To these four men, God gave knowledge and understanding and all kinds of literature and learning. And then it goes on down to talk about how Daniel interpreted the king's dream. And Nebuchadnezzar was just so blown away. He put him in charge of pretty much everything and blessed him with, riches and honor and all of that. But let's go to Daniel chapter 10. This is another part that I want to talk about. And I've been praying and crying over this passage because it blessed me so much. There's a section in Daniel's 10. I've read it many times before, but I guess I forgot about it. It is Daniel's vision of a man. And from my limited understanding, well, not limited, I should say, because the Bible clearly says who this was. It was an angel. But from my limited understanding, this angel came to visit Daniel. And it is amazing some little gems I picked up in here. So in Daniel chapter 10, I'm not going to read through every little bit in here. But basically, Daniel saw a man dressed in linen with a belt of the finest gold. His hair was like crystallite. His face was like lightning, blah, 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 blah. And Daniel was afraid, like, who is this? What's going on? But in verse 10, it says, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, this is Daniel, when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. In verse 12, then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Listen to this. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. Listen to verse 13. This is so important. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what would happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come. And then the angel goes on and begins to explain to him what's about to happen. The angel begins to pour into him wisdom. Listen to verse 17 here. Daniel says, I'm overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I'm helpless. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone and I can hardly breathe. Verse 18, again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. He was touched and given strength. Do not be afraid, O man, highly esteemed, he said. Peace, be strong. Peace, be strong now, be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. And then he goes on to talk to him and tells him what's about to happen. He said, do you know why I came to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. No one supports me against him except Michael, your prince. And then he just goes on to talk about everything that's going to happen. He's saying 3 kings are going to appear in Persia, then a 4th one is going to come. He basically then gives him the prediction and lets him know everything that's about to happen. You may say, Z, where are you going with this? Where I'm going a huge place with this. Number 1, do you see where this wisdom and knowledge came from? From above. That's number 1, the wisdom and knowledge. Daniel was told exactly what was about to happen. Number 2, you notice how in verse Daniel chapter 10 and verse 12 all the way through verse 14, this is the part that I've been praying about a lot. Do you understand that he says, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them? But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me for 21 days. Now, about half of you probably know what this is already referencing to, and the other half may be like, well, what is that all about? This is all talking in the spiritual realm. every part of the world, to be honest with you, every country. If you look biblically in the Bible, let me just put it like this. There is a prince of I guess you can say, demonic forces and evil in the spiritual realms. I mean, we read Ephesians, I think it's Ephesians 6:12. That talks about the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. When we set our minds to knowledge and understanding, you know how sometimes we don't get those answers right away, right? And we're wondering, is God even hearing me? Is God even going to respond? Well, why don't I have an answer yet, right? Do you understand that he says, since the first day you set your mind to gain knowledge and understanding, he's saying you were heard. You were heard. God heard you the first time. But he said, but I was fighting. He said, for 21 days, he said, I was held up, I was detained, I was fighting. And I pray that doesn't go over your head, that encourages you to pray even more. When I pray, I kid you not, this may trip some of you all out, but I literally say, God, you need to send help. I says, I'm praying to you and I want wisdom. I want your answers. I want your guidance. I need for you to send Gabriel. I need for you to send Raphael. I need for you to appoint Michael to my post. I need for you to send help so that my prayers are not held up in the spiritual realms. I need for you to send stronger angels to help fight and deliver my messages to me. Now, some of you may be thinking, Z, that's a little far-fetched. That's fine. You ain't got to do that. You do what works for you. But I'm trying to help you guys to understand. Wisdom and knowledge is so critical in our lives, the wisdom and knowledge that comes from above. That's where we get our direction. That's where we get our warnings. That's where we know what's to come. That's where God begins to interpret and tell us what's going to happen. That's where we get that peace, because we have wisdom and sound. We have sound judgment. That's why wisdom is more profitable. What does it say? Than silver. That's why it yields better returns than gold. You don't have to go out there worrying yourself to death about how to get $1 or how to make some money. No. Force yourself into the presence of God. And I'm not saying don't work. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to make a point. But part of what you need to be doing, let me speak for myself. I always like to keep it about me. The main thing that I do is force myself into the presence of God. And when he gives me that secret wisdom, when he gives me those treasures that are hidden, it is more profitable than silver, and it yields better return than gold. It really does. God is the one who appoints the kings. If you read through the book of Jeremiah or Ezekiel, I'm trying not to go too far because I'm going on 30 minutes now, and I know I've lost probably 90% of everybody on here, but that's okay. Whoever want to listen, keep listening. If you read through Ezekiel, if you take some time to read through that, and I read several chapters in that this morning, I won't go into a lot of it. It would be extremely clear to you that I'm not making this up when I say that God is the one that appoints kings. God is the one that that raises us. He's the ones that allow us to, have our moments in the deepest, darkest valleys. He's the one that, hey, when we're not turning to him and doing what we need to do, yes, God allows calamities and things to come. Yes, he absolutely does. It's all throughout the Bible. He allows things to happen sometimes. That does not always mean we did something wrong. I want to make that clear. But there's clear examples in the Bible. If you just pick up and read Jeremiah, read Ezekiel, read what happened when they were not searching out wisdom and knowledge from God, but they began to turn to idols and worship other gods. Read what happened. Just start even from Ezekiel chapter, what chapter did I start from this morning? You can start from Ezekiel chapter 13, really, and read all the way through. Let me see here. Ezekiel, really read the whole book. I think I read up to chapter 17 today. But read through the book of Ezekiel and look what happens when they begin to follow other gods, when they begin to walk away from the wisdom and the knowledge of God. It's very, very powerful, the whole book. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. The primary point of this podcast and this post is to search out wisdom and knowledge. And there's a tremendous danger when we go throughout our day, when we try to live our lives outside of the knowledge and wisdom of God. Spend that time with him. Cry out and beg to him. Even if your prayers are not answered right away, it is okay. Know that God heard you the first time, and you continue to pray. Now, I take it a step deeper. I pray for the angels to be strengthened. I pray for God to rain down his blessings. I pray for him to use me to help his people. I pray for him to do a whole lot of things in my life. But know that your prayers were answered, and there's a fight in the spiritual realms that tries to keep us down, that tries to keep our answers from coming to us. So I'll wrap this up by saying, let me just look through and see, was there anything else I wanted to mention? I won't go into this other thing I was going to talk about. I'll just leave that be. I'll just wrap this up by saying there's a tremendous danger when wisdom is absent from our lives. And more important than trying to get out there and figure things out on your own, right? Or just trying to go throughout your day without searching out the wisdom and the instruction and the knowledge from God. I'll just say this. You take a tremendous chance when you don't gather and go after that wisdom and knowledge, because you want to be able to do things with wisdom and discernment and sound judgment. And that passage was correct that I mentioned earlier. I just turned to it just to make sure. Ephesians 6:12, that says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." And then it just goes on to talk about, therefore, put on the full armor of God. So anyway, I talked a lot longer than I wanted to. I love you guys. God knows I do. And I'm just speaking from my heart to just share with you not only what I go through, but what I see as a whole amongst many people that I speak to. And I want to be kind in the words that I choose to say. I'll just say that wisdom is tremendously lacking in this world, not to mention love. I'm going to talk about that in another post. Love is lacking tremendously, but we are lacking wisdom tremendously. We're making knee-jerk decisions is what I call it, and we're making decisions about our lives and our futures, and we're off doing things without truly searching out in the wisdom from God and getting the answers from him. You guys, as a business owner, for those who are business owners and entrepreneurs, I'll just say this and I'll close it out. It is so important that before you make plans and before you do things, it is so important that you line that up with God and you line that up with the biblical principles of the Bible. Everything that I do, I try my best to make sure, God, is this what you want? Is this me in search of greed? Is this me in search of my own selfish gain? Or is this something that's going to benefit your people? Is this something that's going to benefit my employees, my staff? Is this something that you want for my life? And until I get that answer from him, I don't care who gets frustrated. I don't care who gets tired of waiting. And I mean that with love and respect. I'm not making a move until God gives me that green light and says, this is for you. This is what I want you to do. You can't go wrong in that. All his ways lead to peace. I want my sleep to be sweet at night. I want when I go about my day, like right now, it's almost 10 a.m. and I've been for hours up reading, praying, meditating, to be quite honest with you. I understand some people may be waiting on me on a few things. We're supposed to be recording, right? But my heart is God comes first in my life. He comes first. Because when he comes first in my life and his wisdom and his knowledge pours into me, then I'm able to lead and be the blessing that you need. That's why we're protected. That's why we continue to move forth and move ahead. That's why there's a hedge of protection around us, because I'm walking in line with what God is telling me to do. So for you entrepreneurs out there, especially the ones working 12 and 14 and 16 hours a day, which I used to do, by the way, I am pleading with you, slow down. Get yourself into the wisdom. Because the wisdom and knowledge you're going to gain from God, the wisdom and knowledge you're going to gain from the Bible, from what he teaches us, is far more profitable than anything you can come up with. His solutions and his strategies are far superior. Go back and read through, I think it's the book of Judges, and read through the story of Gideon. And look at how he took his army down from 32,000 men to 300. So that they still won the war. I already did a podcast on that a while ago. You can go back and find it. But look at that strategy he gave Gideon. First, he had to lower him down so that they wouldn't win with what they had, thinking that they did it on their own. And then God gave them such a brilliant strategy with only about 300 or so men. Such a brilliant strategy that came from God. Such a brilliant strategy. That's what we need to be diverting our attention to is, God, what is it you have in my life? What is it that you want? What do you say? Anyway, I've gone way over on my time. I love you guys. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm sitting here in my closet literally just pouring out my heart to you, because this is things that God has poured into me. I am committed to praying and fasting right now more than I've ever done in my life. I'm committed to it, and I'm committed to seeking wisdom and knowledge from God. I'm committed to growing in terms of my learnings. Don't be too prideful to learn from other people. God absolutely uses men to teach us. We are to be as shrewd as serpents, but as innocent as doves. And what I take from that in my own life is there's so much I can learn from other people, other coaches, other mentors, what people are out there doing. But then I come back and look at, okay, God, what pieces of this is in line with your principles that I want to take and grow from? So learn, read some books, read business books, read, all other kind of books, learn from other people, and then take it back to God and say, God, what pieces in this do you want to grow me in? All right. Anyway, I know I talked a lot. I love you all. I tremendously do. Please seek out wisdom. Please stop worrying and stressing about everything going on in life. I know that's kind of easy to say, to stop worrying. Let me say that a different way. Please, instead of worrying and stressing about things in life, devote more time to just soaking in your word and asking God to reveal his secret mysteries to you, as he did to Daniel when no one could interpret that dream. And Daniel went to God and asked him for wisdom. And in the middle of the night, I think it was, the Bible teaches us, God revealed his mysteries to Daniel. Daniel was able to go and interpret that dream. It blew the king away. He's just like, now I know that your God is the God the God that answers men. Now I know that you serve the true God. That's who we need to be as we walk as priests and kings in this world. People need to look at our lives and be able to say, first of all, there's no way this person should have been able to achieve this or accomplish this without going the routes you're supposed to go. I know that this person has to have some sort of a connection with God, because I don't see this happening in nobody else's life the way this person's doing it. That's how we're supposed to be walking as kings and priests. I'm going to end on that note. I love you all. This is Z with Unlocking Greatness Podcast.